Welcome to the First Generation American Podcast. Today's podcast is brought by Miami Glasnik, our official sponsor, and our special guest is Boris Malagurski, Serbian Canadian director, TV host, activist, and the list goes on and on. But thank you for coming up for an interview.
Thanks for having me.
How you like Miami so far?
So far, it's everything's going really great. I have great hosts, and I love Miami. I've been here once before. A very short period of time, but this time I'm going to be here for one more day, so 2 nights altogether. So it's an improvement. Next time I'm going to be 3 days probably.
For sure, you need at least a week in Miami to really enjoy it.
Yeah.
But today, your projection is today 7 p.m. at 4 Points by Sheraton Hotel.
That's right. It's going to be at the 4 Points by Sheraton Miami Beach. I'm very excited about that. This is the third installment of my Weight of Change trilogy. We screened the film in Chicago. That was the world premiere last weekend. After that, we had a screening in Las Vegas, and now Miami is like the third city ever to see this film.
How was the premiere?
It was great. In Chicago, people loved the premiere. It was a mix of Americans and Serbs and, people from the Balkans who came out to watch the film. And I think they liked it. I think they enjoyed it. Their comments after the film were very positive, because it really showcases what happened in Serbia from 1999 to today. But it's also relevant for people who are not from Serbia, who live anywhere around the world, because Serbia is kind of like this example of how a territory becomes colonized and destroyed, and how it's being biologically destroyed, in essence, by all these experiments that are taking place, that are being conducted by all these world powers. So it's really interesting for everybody to see, especially Americans, because their government is the one that is involved in all this to a great extent, and they need to know where their tax dollars are essentially going, and whether it's really fighting for freedom around the world and improving the world, or is it making the world a less safe place and a more more dangerous and more polluted place.
How did your idea from the first, the second, and third movie evolved? How did you get ideas for all the movies, and what do you think changed on the way on your work on that say a project? It's a Weight of Change project. That's how I like to call it. So, and it's your life's project. So, can you please explain a little bit?
Yeah, well, I lived in Vancouver in Canada, and for 6 years, whenever anybody would ask me, where are you from? I'd say I'm from Serbia, and they'd be like, oh, it's like too bad. It was like one of those situations where they felt sorry for me, or sometimes they had no idea. They would ask like, well, is there like a war going on there right now? I'm like, no, that was quite a while ago. And then they would ask me, so what happened? And, I was pretty young when I was there. I was 16. I had no idea. Like I've seen some documentaries, I've watched some programs that dealt with the matter, but I never felt there was one that really explained what happened. So I wanted to do some research for myself, and I started reading some books, started reading, various articles about the topic, and I realized that there's actually no movie out there that explains all those things in a very, interesting and simple way. And I thought to myself, why wouldn't I, make a film like that? So before The Weight of Change, I actually made one film called Kosovo, Can You Imagine? That film dealt with human rights of Serbs and other non-Albanians in Kosovo province following Kosovo's illegal declaration of independence in 2008. And, I really wanted to raise awareness of what's happening in that province, because the West always says it's, bastion of democracy and freedom and all those things. And you can see in the film that that's simply not the case, at least not for everybody. And after that film, I realized, I could take on this bigger project of explaining what happened to Yugoslavia, to this country where I was born that I don't really remember, but I've heard stories from my family and older people, and I decided to make the film and try to explain Western involvement, because I think that was the main element that led to the breakup of Yugoslavia. The stories always presented that nationalism appeared out of nowhere and it broke up the country, which is just a fairy tale, because you've had all these large interest groups, major powers, coming in and supporting different fractions throughout Yugoslavia. They were arming them. They were promoting separatism legally. They were, through their laws, the United States had laws to promote separatism in Yugoslavia with their Foreign Operations Appropriations Act 101513, even with the National Security Decision Directive in 1984, where it said that they would work on dismantling the Yugoslav economy. And when the economy fell, that's when you had an uproar of all these extremist tensions and everything happened in Yugoslavia. So, these were all topics that nobody really dealt with in a cinematic sense. And I thought, let's put this in the film and explain how Yugoslavia broke up and how the region was essentially colonized by Western powers. And then when I made the first part, I decided to make the second part and focus more on neoliberalism in the economic sense, and explain how Yugoslavia was colonized economically after the breakup. So it deals with everything that happened after the 1990s up until today in the economic sense. And the third part that's screening now, that one essentially deals with how we were biologically destroyed, because NATO used depleted uranium munitions during its bombing of Yugoslavia. It actually used them before in Bosnia and Herzegovina in 1995 as well. It used them in Iraq and Kuwait during the Gulf War in 1991. But it really, like, the big experiment was in Yugoslavia in 1999, when NATO dropped 15 tons of this material. And that's really shocking, because only one particle of depleted uranium can cause so much damage in your body that it can cause cancer of pretty much any part of your body. So it's really troubling to see what happened to us and what's continued to happen after the bombing, how we were essentially poisoned with all these ecological disasters that were caused by the bombing. We had, food experiments. They're still experimenting on our food, and they continued experimenting on our system, creating apathy in our society, just creating, a very unhealthy situation. So, not to go too much into details, that's essentially what I wanted to do. First part is about the breakup. Second part is about the economy. And third part is about our biological survival. And it's really trying to say that change is no longer a matter of ideology or choice. It is a question of our bare survival.
So great. So besides obstacles that you had when you were making the movie, you introduced us to a lot of people, which we never. I don't even know how do you manage to get a hold of all these people. It's really hard, especially in the United States and Canada, I assume, to get them to talk, especially former operatives from the government. And that's same you being, I think it was 21, 22 when you did the first movie?
Yeah, I was actually 20 when I started working on it. Yeah.
That was, for me, it was amazing. How do you actually get in touch with someone, and how you actually do all the research and get all these people for one movie? It's a lot of work to get so many interviews and select one of the best things from those interviews and put it in the movie. And I assume it took a lot of time.
Yeah, there's no big secret to it. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort. I mean, essentially, when you write to someone, when you want an interview, most people just write one email, they don't get a reply, and they're thinking, okay, he's not going to give an interview. Or they maybe write once or twice, they get a reply that they're not going to get the interview, and they give up. I don't. That's it. That's basically the whole secret to it. I don't give up until I get the interview, or at least until I get that person who I'm asking for an interview to tell me directly, like, there's no way this is going to happen. So when they tell me that, then I give up. I'm like, okay, well, I can't, force you to sit down. I could kidnap them, yes, but that would be quite illegal, which is not something that I would do. But, what I do is I send emails every day. When I get a reply from one, for example, like the official email, if it's a PR person or whatever, I go around that person and try to see who that person I'm trying to interview knows that I could get to, and that person could connect me to the other person. So it's like one of those things with 6 degrees of separation. Like, at least, like, there's 5 people between you and the Queen of England. You just have to find out who those 5 people are. So it's just a matter of that.
Great. So,
and it's a little bit of luck as well. I mean, when I was interviewing Oliver Stone, like, I was in Belgrade, and Oliver Stone was in Zagreb in Croatia. He was at a festival there, and I called the festival actually to ask them if they would help me out with the interview. And they couldn't help out, like they had a contract and everything. They couldn't bug Oliver Stone about those things. So what I basically did was I put it up on Facebook, said, look, did anybody know Oliver Stone? Like, I know it's a long shot, but can anybody connect me to it? And of course, I got a bunch of messages, jokingly saying that, oh, I'm having some chivapi with him right now, so stop by. But there was one person who wrote a number of his friends who was good friends with the organizer of the festival in Zagreb, and he said he connected us, and he said, with his help we could get to him. I could get to ask the question directly. That's all that they could do. And it's fair enough. So I sat in a car with my friend, went down to Zagreb, got there, asked Oliver Stone if he could give the interview. Like, he was in a big rush. I gave him just a DVD of the first part of The Way of Chains, and he looked at it and he left. He didn't give me any reply. So I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe he's just not interested and it's not going to work. and I talked to his PR person. And I asked her, sorry, if he'd be cool with an interview. So she said like, we'll call you. So I thought like that was a polite no, and this is one of the mistakes that I made. I shouldn't have thought that was a polite no. So I sat back in my car, went back to Belgrade, 4-hour drive, and I woke up in the morning and I opened up my email and said, "Can you do 4 p.m." from Oliver Stone's PR? So I thought to myself, well, now I have to go drive back, which is not a problem, of course, but it would have been easier. So you have to believe. You have to believe, and sometimes luck happens when you least expect it.
You have to be persistent in whatever you do. So you open our eyes with all your movies. We learn a lot of things. I don't even know, is there any other source of information I can find all that you actually put in the movie? And talking to all these people, is there any person on the way? I mean, I assume there's a lot, but someone actually changed your mind, open your eyes, and like, I didn't even know this. This completely changed the whole thing I know about everything.
Oh, that happens every day. I mean, I don't think it's possible for anybody to not change their mind, all the time. When you're reading a lot of books and processing a lot of information, eventually you find something that challenges your viewpoint. And I'm the type of person who really thinks that the truth is all that matters. So if, for example, you tell me, look, Boris, you're wrong about this thing, I'm going to challenge you. Why? I don't like when, we live in an age of Twitter and Facebook where everybody's like, oh, you're dumb. You don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't do anything for me. Like, tell me why. That happens on social media as well. That people tell me you're wrong, and they list their arguments, and I listen to them. I say, you know what, you're right, and I'm actually thankful to that person. If you come up to me and say like, you're wrong about this, here's the proof, I'm going to accept it. I'm going to be thankful to you because you improved my intellectual life. You brought me closer to the truth. And a lot of people get mad and feel like it's like an attack on them, and it's like against them. It's like, if you're wrong, I'm attacking you. No, I'm trying to like make you a better person, essentially, because I'm helping you understand that things are a little bit different, and this will help you in your way towards the truth. So there is no, I don't think we humans can uncover all the truth of this world. We can only yearn to be as close to the truth as possible, and I think that makes us better people when we're close to the truth. And whoever helps us get closer, I think we should be very thankful to that person.
I mean, you're one of the persons I always admire for you're doing what you love. I mean, a lot of people actually do things for money. Of course, we all need money to survive, but you actually are sticking to it for a extended period of time. I mean, you're still doing it. It's not all about the money. A lot of people are in only for the money. So can you just explain the difference and why you're doing it, and why should everyone do it? I mean, if they're into things like that.
Well, look, it's a matter of philosophy of life. I mean, I've had a lot of offers I've had some big offers. I'm not going to talk about the details, but I've had offers to sell my soul for a lot of money. And it essentially, it's not like the real devil came up and gave me the contract, but it was like the equivalent.
Almost.
Yeah, it was similar. You know what I'm talking about, but we're not going to talk about it publicly. So I've had those offers, and I thought to myself every time that I've had, this opportunity to sell my soul, what do I get out of it? Okay, I get money, but money comes and goes. Like, what you do is what stands out and stays here after we're all gone. I mean, none of us, people who are watching this, unless they're like born right now, and then they're not going to understand anything. But everybody watching this and understanding what I'm saying is not going to be alive in the next 100 years. We're all going to be gone, and what we do now is what's going to transcend our mortal coil, in a sense. And to me, that's what matters. I mean, otherwise, what's the point of being alive? What's the point of living if you're gonna give up your beliefs and who you are for some paper that you can trade in for different stuff? I mean, to me, that's the whole point of it. I mean, I know there's people who are not going to believe it. I mean, there's people out there who really believe that making money is the only motive you can have in life. They think that profit is, reigns supreme. There's nothing more important than that. And then when they hear what I'm saying, they don't believe me, because they're starting, in their world, it's impossible for anybody to have any different motives. So there's always going to be people who are going to say, oh, you're doing everything because of the money. I mean, I say to those people, if I really wanted to do, anything just to get some money, I would be making very different films, because these films are not something that makes a lot of money, but it does have an impact, and that's what matters to me.
So a lot of people, I mean, where you're from in Serbia, a lot of people are into money because we grew up with no money. And then why, if first you're thinking about you need to survive, then money, then you get sucked into thinking about it too much. You cannot get it out of your head. Then a lot of people who come this way, and then you meet a lot of people who have money and see how unhappy they are. Always mess around. We go to a restaurant. The guy next to me, he has $1 billion. He can eat the same steak as I do, and we can both afford it. He eats eggs, 2 eggs over easy. Doesn't matter. He still can't like it more than I do. And he's miserable. It doesn't matter the money. It can be having millions of dollars. But a lot of us need time. We need to get the money so we understand. But we have a lot of role models you can look up to, and people are actually telling you, rethink it on the way, because you're working on something for 20, 30 years. So you can, even I'm messing around in Serbia, we have say people go to Germany, Austria, they work 40 years. So they come home, they build their tomb, like pharaohs in Egypt, and so that's what you work all your life so you can build a nice tomb for yourself.
Yeah, that sounds pretty gruesome when you think about it that way. But in essence, yeah. I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned that. Of course, we in Serbia have the saying, money is not a problem. There is no money. It's one of those things, I like that you pointed out, billionaire can't be a billion times happier than you are, and I think I read a blog once a couple of years back with this guy who hangs out. He's moderately rich, not that rich, but his job brings him really close to millionaires and billionaires. And he says, I know it's like a cliche, but really, really rich people are not happy because they have so much money and they're lonely because you can never know. People can be good actors. You can never know if you have a true friend simply because he likes your personality, and wants to hang out with you. Or if it's just because of the money. If you don't have true friends and people in your life who you can hang out with without any interest, that's what a friend is essentially. I mean, it's not natural, and people who are lonely die sooner. They just die. I mean, it's been scientifically proven that being around a lot of friends increases your lifespan. So everybody would like to have $1 million. Of course, we'd know how to spend it. It's not a problem. But as I said, that can't be the only motive. And I think that being excessively rich or anything like that would, change our lives so much that we wouldn't even imagine how to, adjust to that. And I don't think we all want it, but if we could see ourselves in 3 years, how we would look like and live after we've gotten those $1 million, it's very questionable whether we'd actually want to go for it.
I mean, I understand in Serbia, as far as I follow the news and all the TV shows and whatever, that's kind of United States thing. People don't talk about it back home. I know we have a problem with politics, criminal reality show, whatever. That's number one topic. I mean, no one actually discusses this. No one talks about business, actually, how to start something, how to be happy, a lot of people have Instagram and Facebook so they can do some famous quotes of 5 million followers, some famous guy, but no one actually talks about it. I always wondered, do you maybe have in future some plan to actually do something like that so you can, because you're one of the rare persons in Serbia, so you can actually get that message from here, from Canada, United States, back to Serbia, and actually educate people in that way. So we can focus on that a little bit. I guess there's probably a crowd. A lot of people actually need to hear that first, because if you don't hear it, you don't understand it. So
no, yeah, absolutely. Well, it would be easier to, first of all, it would be easier to make films without donations, because right now, to make a film, we need donations. We need people actually, contributing as much as they can towards the film project. And it would be so much easier if we had, just money right away and not have to beg people for it. If going back to the previous question, if I had $1 million, I would invest all of it in my films. That's really what I would do. I mean, maybe I buy a big screen TV or something like a bigger TV, but that's it. In essence, it's not. I mean, how much money do you really need?
I mean, it all depends on person to person. Let's say you can buy a Maserati tomorrow. You can be bored in a couple of months. It's a toy.
Yeah.
And the problem is when you're living too high, when you learn certain life standards, you can't go down.
You always need more and more.
And if you go down, you're not happy.
Yeah.
So even if you're not happy in the first place, then again, when you get it, if you go a little bit lower, you're not happy. So you're always trying to strive for more.
I think Americans have sort of forgotten what life is all about. In my sense, I know that people here are chasing money, and that's fine if that's what they like. But I think the essence of what people essentially want out of life is to be loved, to have somebody close to them who they can, share their life with, to have a family, to be around friends who love them. to live decently, so to have a paycheck that allows them a certain lifestyle that is not extravagant, but is decent enough that they like to have a decent job, so nothing that's too hard, but something that challenges them. I think that's what people essentially need. Like that's what everybody in a sense needs. If somebody wants more, that's fine. I'm not against that, but I think that they're not going to find happiness there. If they really want that and they want to try to find happiness that way, that's fine. But I don't think it's going to work.
So you also mentioned that a lot of young people are leaving the country, of course, but it's good for everyone to leave for a certain amount of time and then come back and use that experience. But a lot of people actually don't come back. What can be done? What do you think you should be better in Serbia so people can stay? Of course, change for politics. We're going to go back into politics and everything. But is there some Serbia sounds happier. I have a friend I mentioned right now. She lives in Austria, so they come to visit me in the United States, and they go back to Serbia. So they travel all over the place. And they're telling me they're happiest in Serbia. We just a little bit more money. So actually, the system is not what makes people unhappy. Yeah. But she's telling me Serbia people are most happy. Here, Austria, whatever, Serbia is number one place. Even so, nothing can beat that.
Well, when I was working on Happy Television, I had my show called Revolution, and I interviewed this Belgian woman once on the streets of Belgrade, and she actually spoke Serbian. I'm assuming she was married to a Serb, lived in Belgrade. She lives in Belgium now, and I talked to her, and I filmed like this short interview with her, where she said that in Belgium, when the government is trying to do something that is contrary to the interests of the people, when they're systemically pushing something that's against the people go out and protest and they block the streets. And this is the same thing that they do in France as well and other countries that are developed around the world. People protest. The unions organize, various NGOs and organizations organize, and they block the streets of Paris until they get what they deserve and what they're fighting for. And then she said, but in Serbia, when people see that the government is doing something bad, they swear at the TV set, and have a drink of rakia and forget about it, And that's the core issue of why we're living the way we're living. That's, and the system knows that, because the television station actually cut out that part from my show. It could have been, the most innocent thing. It's just saying that if you have something against the government, you have to, fight for it and protest. But that's the main thing that they're worried about, because that's the thing that produces change. When you go out, when you protest, when you advocate against certain measures, you block the streets and say, this is it. We're not going to move from here until you do what the people wants. If things are going to change, people in Serbia are going to have to realize that's what needs to happen. And I'm hoping that this film, The Weight of Change 3, is going to contribute to that sort of change in our mentality that needs to happen in order for people to realize that they have to fight for what they want. They can't just complain. We love complaining. I like to say Serbs, if there was if complaining was an Olympic sport, we would win silver just so we could complain about not getting the gold. So, we like to complain. We need to stop complaining once and do something about it. That's it. It's not like people say changing the system. How do we do that? You have the government, you have the world power. No, it's just like going out and not giving up until you get what you want. That's it.
So is that, we always talk, we want to change the system, we want to change the government. No one wants to admit back home in Serbia, you need to change yourself first. We all need to change from within, and everything else will change around us. But it's easier to always to cast someone who tells this is not good. No one says let's fix this. Let's do it this way. So a lot of people forget about that, And
as Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in everybody else.
So and everyone talks with you like, oh, Boris, hey, do the movie about this, do that. You told me all the different suggestions I have. No one asks, Boris, how are you? How you do your life? How hard is for you to do the movie? How often you sleep? How much you work? How can you tell us about?
I think I sleep less than our president Vučić, and the guy sleeps like, I don't know if he even sleeps, to be honest.
Probably not.
Yeah, for everybody who doesn't know, we have a president who doesn't sleep.
Tell us about your work ethic. How do you actually, make yourself get up in the morning when it's too hard to wake up? What drives you through it?
Drugs. No, I'm kidding. But what gets me through the day? It's just I like to work. I guess it's in my DNA. My family is also very hardworking, and I've always been taught that you have to work hard for I think the main thing that it all stems from our childhood. I think the main thing you need to teach your kids is to be patient. I think that's one of the main things that nobody ever talks about. But in teaching them to be patient, you teach them that to get your goal, you need to work hard on it, and it's not going to fall from the sky. And when you're patient, you win essentially because you're willing to wait it out, and fight for it, and then you get what you want. And so far, every film that I wanted to make, I made, which is good because sometimes it took me years to complete a project, but I never gave up on it. So when you're patient, you know that it's not gonna be it's gonna be an uphill battle. It's not gonna be easy. It's gonna take time, but in essence, you'll get the prize. And every day when I get up, I think to myself, I'm gonna be one step closer today to completing my film, to screening it somewhere, to whatever that I'm doing, to completing my TV show. And it's a good feeling because you know that success is coming. It's just around the corner. You just have to do what you can to get there as fast as you can, of course. But
a lot of people burn out because they set up short-term goals and you're trying to do something, then you get it's easy disappointed. And a lot of people set up long-term goals. Like you, what are your long-term goals? Do you have something in mind? I mean, if you want to disclose and share, what would you like? Where do you see yourself? Like, let's say 10, 20, 30 years. What would you like to see yourself?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, before I always used to make all these big project ideas, and then I'd be working on 3 projects at the same time, and really have literally no time to sleep. But so now I'm just kind of just waiting out this movie, Weight of Change 3, this film tour to end, and then I'll see what I'll do after that. I would really like to make a feature fiction film. This is something I'd really like to do, and I will do this eventually, I'm sure. But it's something I really like to focus on because I got into film because of fiction, not because of documentaries, which is not something a lot of people know. But documentaries are cheaper to make. I mean, I can get money, the money that I need for these documentaries through donations to actually produce them because, you can make a film with, a couple of thousand or tens of thousands of dollars. You can't make a fiction film with that kind of money. You need a couple of $100,000 for like a cheap fiction film. So so even for those low budget films, you need a lot of money. And I don't have connections. I'm not in any political party. I mean, I have my fair share of offers, as I said, from various political groups. I've refused all of them so far. And I'm just somebody, trying to make an honest buck in a sense. And is the camera okay? That's fine. Okay. It was beeping. That's why I stopped. But, I'm trying to make, an honest buck by doing my TV shows, doing all these things, and trying to make good films that will bring about donations for future projects. Everything that I make with these films, I invest in the next film, and it's kind of like the circle because my heart is really with the films, and this is what I want to keep doing, and it's something that I don't get funding for very easily. I mean, I've never gotten a single dollar from the Film Center of Serbia, even though my documentaries have circled the globe. They keep giving money to somebody else whose documentaries you've probably never heard of.
So, and as far as your life goals and career goals, and who was your role model? And how did you saw someone who's like, okay, I'm going to become like that person. I'm still trying to be like that person. Everyone has one, I think. So who was yours?
Well, it depends. I have several role models. When it comes to documentaries, I really like Michael Moore's style. And I know that Politika newspaper in Serbia actually called me the Serbian Michael Moore. I like his style because it's very simple. It's very it has all of the facts it has everything, but it's presented in a very emotional way, in a very articulate way, and it's hard to explain it. It's kind of like it's either rational or emotional, but his documentaries are kind of both. That's what I'm trying to get at. And I really like that style. I don't agree with everything that he says and does, and we have major disagreements on various issues, but I like the style. So although I've been working on these films for quite a while, trying to emulate his style and everything, but I think that the time has come for me to try to find my own sort of style of making films. And so we'll see who my role model will be when I start making fiction films.
How important for someone to have a role model?
I think it's important because it, there's a saying. Let me try to remember what it says. It's like mediocre artists copy, great artists steal. So it's an interesting saying, but it's true. When you have a role model, it gives you kind of like this example of where you could be if you just put enough effort into it. So I think it's great if you have one. It's great if you don't have one either. You can be your own role model and say like, well, I'm going to be the person who I want to be in 10 years. I think some actor actually said that when they received an Oscar. I don't remember which one was, but like he said like, oh, my role model is me in 10 years. So that's also a good way to look at it. Matthew McConaughey. Okay, great. Yeah, there you go. We have an expert in film.
So I always said, like Senator Macedon, Aristotle was his role model. He conquered the world. So if you want to have, that's my opinion, you need to have a role model. And a lot of people, I think, in Serbia don't have one. And we're looking at the wrong persons, especially.
And they should have one. Our President Vučić. He works really hard to be everybody's role model.
I mean, even if you're looking where he's saying, maybe if you just focus on that part, maybe that's going to be a good thing.
Well, look, I actually, I don't want to be the black sheep here, but I actually agree with Vučić that people need to work harder. I agree with him. Problem is, when you have a rotten system, it's like that hamster going around in the wheel, You're working really hard, but you're not going anywhere. And that's why the system needs to change. So I agree with him that we should work harder, but you need to change the system, buddy. I mean, you can't just keep saying to people, keep running and the wheel will eventually start moving. It's not going to move because you're the one who's the wheel, and we're running around in circles. So he has a historic opportunity. If he's watching this, I'm sure he follows me around everywhere I go. If he's watching this, Mr. President, change the system. You have a historic chance. I'm not like a politician. I'm not one of those opposition politicians who's like, I want Vučić to fail so that people will vote for me. I would love it if he succeeded in doing the right things. He's not doing it. That's a problem. But if he did, I'd be the first one to tip my hat and say like, good for you, and I applaud that.
A lot of small countries adopt foreign systems and ideas of the government, and so we always took the wrong ones, and we can see that through your movies. Is there, we live in the United States, so is there something you think we can take from American system and bring back to Serbia and actually works?
I think the whole fact that people have this awareness of democracy. I know it's not really a democracy in the United States, it's a plutocracy. But the people, first of all, they mostly believe it is a democracy, but the people and the way they make decisions here, regular people, it is very democratic, and I would love it if people would learn this, if people in Serbia would learn this from Americans. So I heard a bunch of times, and I've seen with my own eyes when, let's say 10 Americans are confronted with a problem or they need to do some task together, they democratically elect somebody to lead the group, out of those 10 Americans, and they go for it, and, they do everything democratically, make these decisions democratically. If the majority is for something, they do that. So, this is something that I'd love to see in Serbia, because in Serbia, everybody wants to be the leader. It's like if 10 people need a task, there's going to be 10 leaders, and everybody's going to be pushing in their own direction, and you're not going to get anything done. So that's a problem. Everybody in Serbia thinks that they know what's best for the country, how they could bring peace between the United States and Russia, how they're going to, bring a man to Mars or whatnot. They have all the solutions. This is my constructive criticism. We need to figure out how to work together, because that's the only way. And this is what Americans know how to do. They know how to work together. They know how to get the job done. And I'd really love it if we could pick this up from the Americans and implement it in Serbia.
We always focus on trying to change the image of Serbia everywhere in the world. A lot of people are not. So, you're doing it. You have Novak Djokovic doing it. There's a lot of sports players, they're trying to do that. We need more people like that. If we're showing the bad picture, especially right now, people can actually see the internet. They can see both sides. Earlier, Americans, they look at the TV. Let's say I mentioned Serbia earlier. Was, Siberia, is it cold over there? This time, last couple of years, it was like, Syria, is your family okay? So it's kind of whatever is on the news, they watch TV, and that's how they make an assumption.
Yes.
So we're trying to bring more American tourists to Belgrade, but a lot of people need to focus on actually bringing better image. We don't need to adapt anything. We can just be a little bit open to the world, and a lot of people should focus on that. And even here, we all hang out. I call it in tribes, so it's a good thing. It's a comfort zone. I'm always a fan of stepping out of the comfort zone because that's where you face challenges and that's how you grow. A lot of people don't grow, so we bring Serbia here. So nothing changed. We're just like almost like affecting the system. Where here, system is so strong you can't beat it.
Yeah.
It's so many people trying to change it, but system holds. In Serbia, something's changed. Politics every 4 years, everything changes really, really, really fast. So
that's the problem. I mean, and we need a system in Serbia. And they did these polls, and they asked people in Canada and Serbia what is to them a good politician, a good leader, and is it somebody who bangs his fist on the table and says this is what we're going to do, or is it somebody who asks the people and tries to democratically make decisions? And in Canada, of course, they preferred the one who democratically makes decisions, whereas in Serbia they preferred the one who bangs his fist on the table, and because they saw the democratic leader as being weak and they saw the fist banging guy as being strong. And this is an issue because when you have a system that relies completely on one person in power, and we see this all the time. We see it with Vučić in Serbia, who says that Serbia is safe only while I'm president. You see that in, for example, Republika Srpska entity in Bosnia with Milorad Dodik, who is the president there. Well, he's the president of Bosnia, but he always says, like, without me, Republika Srpska is going to fail. That's really scary, though, because people biologically die eventually, and what's going to happen is that if the country fails without this one person, I would never want to bet on one politician being alive forever so that Serbia can be forever. That's not going to happen. I would love to see a politician who says that, what, if we leave power, the system is still going to be great and strong and persistent because we created a good system. It's not like we need to be here. We vote for politicians to lead our country, not to be our country. And that's something that Serbs should really understand. It's not about, it doesn't matter if Vučić goes and somebody else comes tomorrow, and you have a third person that comes later, a fourth, a fifth. That's all going to change. The system needs to grow and be better than it is right now. And that's what we need to focus on. And people don't focus on that because they don't understand what the system means. And that's kind of what I try to explain in my film, The Weight of Change 3, to explain what the system is and how people can change it. Like actually, like after you leave the cinema, after watching the film, you will have an idea of what to do.
I always like to compare it with a house. If you build a shaky foundation needs to be strong. You can tear down the walls again and rebuild it again. But if you build a strong foundation, the first floor, second, you can just top it off and you can have skyrise sure enough. So, but we're always building a shaky foundation. It's like, oh, they didn't do good. Just tore it down.
Absolutely. Politicians should just be the chimney, I mean, they're full of hot air anyway. But anyways, it's basically exactly what you're talking about. We don't have a foundation, and we're building, Belgrade waterfront.
Is there any? I mean, we're gonna see your movie tonight. I'm excited to see it, of course. But is there any? If I ask you right now, to pick one nationality as a people that we should be looking to and be like, we need to be more like these people, and type of government or a country would you like Serbia to look like? At least not exactly. We cannot be the same, but what's your opinion on that?
Iceland.
Both
people of Iceland and the country of Iceland could be a very good role model for Serbia and Serbs. Because this is a country that was also, like Serbia, fooled into neoliberalism. They privatized all their biggest banks. They took out huge loans, and they were told that neoliberalism is great, and if they just follow what the IMF says, they're all going to be rich, and it's all going to work out. And their economy collapsed. And what they did was, when this happened, the European Central Bank, the IMF, all of these big financial institutions, the World Bank, were pressuring them into accepting austerity, which is what's being done in Serbia right now. We're in austerity. So they pushed the Icelanders into austerity and forced them to accept this sort of I-Save austerity package. It was called I-Save. And the president of Iceland said, you know what, we're going to go to a referendum and see what the people think. And the people rejected this referendum. And everybody was saying, without this package, we're going to we're going to collapse. It's going to be total chaos and mess. It's going to be worse. We're never going to recover. I think they had a second referendum as well. The people again voted no against the iSafe package. Iceland's economy is growing faster than the U.S. and Europe economy combined. So it works. And Icelandic people were aware that you can't get rich with austerity. You can't get rich with foreign investment. You need to have your own domestic industry, and you have a sovereign economy that you control, not somebody else. And that's as simple as that. Icelanders could have said, well, we're a really small country. This is what they tell us in Serbia all the time. We're such a small country. I mean, how can we go against all these big financial institutions? Well, the Icelandic people did just that, even though there's 330,000 of them. That's it. So they're much, much smaller than we are, but they had the guts to say no to all these big financial institutions. And, then people say, well, but they're an island in the middle of the Atlantic, and we're a landlocked country. How can we say no to the IMF? And in that case, I was giving the example of Hungary, because Hungary is also a landlocked country in Europe, right next to Serbia, and they told the IMF to beat it. And they closed down the IMF office in Budapest, so they did it as well. And then people say, well, you can't beat these financial institutions. We're really indebted. And I say, well, look at Ecuador. I mean, they were heavily in debt. And then you had a guy called Rafael Correa, who became president, who challenged these financial institutions, took them to court, international courts, and actually won. They declared the debt to be illegitimate, and they wrote off most of Ecuador's debt. So you can win if the truth is on your side. The only question is, do you have politicians who are willing to fight for you, and not just their own position in government and foreign interests that brought them there or have sponsored them to get there? And, WikiLeaks is very clear about our own government right now. You don't have to research anything more than just reading WikiLeaks about their contacts with the U.S. Embassy. It's not, it's not a government of the people. We are a colony. Nothing changed in 2012. I think it actually became more brutal. The colonization became more brutal.
There's a lot of changes when you make your movies from a first to third sequel. That when you're working, is there sometimes it happens? Oh, this changed. I have to redo the part of the movie. Have you learning new things on the way, because it's a process to make 1-2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the first I'd love to show you the first script and the last script, final script before I record the narration. It changes a lot because in researching and events that happen, it changes. The story changes. I mean, if you look at The Weight of Chains, first part, it is a very accurate description of where the world was in 2010 when the film came out. A lot of things have changed since then. A lot of things haven't, unfortunately. And the main premise, unfortunately, has remained the same. We are still a colony.
Great. So what do you think in Serbia and the United States versus all the immigration that we have? Are people connected enough, or it can be way better? I mean, I know our government probably doesn't care about who left. We don't even have the exact number of how many people left or coming in and going back and forth.
No, I don't think our government cares, because we used to have a ministry for diaspora. Then it became the office for diaspora, and now it's just even below an office. I don't know what it is.
And it's not. I mean, we have more people leaving. We need to have a bigger office or a bigger ministry for diaspora.
Oh, absolutely.
And
because you know what, the media is very well controlled by the government in Serbia, and when you leave Serbia, you suddenly realize, oh my God, it's not the way that they're telling us that it is. So the sort of media propaganda doesn't work outside of Serbia. And if you had all these big connections with people outside of Serbia, then, and they could vote and everything, they can vote right now, but it's very restricted. It's not that easy. It's very
well controlled.
Yeah. And, but if everybody could vote, and you have, that could be a population of several million, if everybody in diaspora could vote in the elections and not be affected by state-controlled media, I mean, then you couldn't rule the way you ruled so far. So they don't want to be connected. They always tell, they want to be connected in the sense that they want the diaspora to send them money. That's what they care about. So if the diaspora is sending money to Serbia, that's fine. But if the diaspora wants to have an opinion or something, oh, what do you want? You live over there. You don't live here. That's automatically the argument they use. And it's really troubling, because the diaspora understand the situation, because they're from looking at it from the side, they understand the situation very often much better than people living in Serbia, because they're consumed, the people in Serbia, with their day-to-day lives, and they're being brainwashed by the media. And when they go out, they realize that it's not the way that the government is saying that it is. They realize that even though the government says that we are leading the region in the economy, we're actually doing worse than Albania, in average salaries and all that. So it's and half of Africa, for that matter. Half of Africa has bigger salaries than Serbia does. So that's why they don't want the diaspora to be connected to Serbia, because they could influence people in Serbia and they could influence elections and all that. And I personally think that people in the diaspora should vote, even though people say like, oh no, we don't. No, even some people in the diaspora think that they shouldn't vote because they don't live in Serbia, but it's not the point. Serbia is your country wherever you are. It's not just a matter, it's like only if you live in Serbia, then it's your country. If you leave Serbia, then it's not your country. That's not the way it works. It should be your country wherever you are. And a lot of people who living in the United States and Canada and Western Europe, they'd like to go back to Serbia, but they know the situation there is not very good. So why not be able to affect the situation so that Serbia becomes a richer country, not just by sending money, but also by voting in the elections and trying to change the system from outside. Serbs have the right to participate in what happens in Serbia wherever they are.
And right now, I mean, media is really being controlled in Serbia, but we have the internet. You have still more options to actually influence people in a lot of ways. But I guess people lost hope. They've been outside for like 20, 30 years. Nobody actually, they care, but maybe people got tired, get older, so they didn't want to influence it that much anymore. But a lot of people, like, who knows how many people are out there, doctors, PhD, there's businessmen, millionaires who can actually help out back home, but no one is actually reaching out to them. It's really hard to get in touch with all of them.
Well, if I say in the government, I would totally reach out. And the thing about social media is it allows, you have social media on one hand, and you have government-controlled media on the other. And social media, you have a billion options. You have a billion points of view. You have a billion ways to look at whatever. And then you have the government media that only has one view on everything. And people always say, well, you have social media, but it's not very homogenized. It doesn't give you the chance to connect with people on one goal. And in Serbia, people still watch a lot of television. Maybe that's going to change in 20, 30 years. But right now, people mostly get their information from RTS, which is Radio Television Serbia, and Pink, which is the largest commercial TV station in Serbia. This is where they get the news. And the news is distorted. It's not the truth. On Pink, it's very clearly fake news. On RTS, it's just like trying to hide or mask what's really going on in a more culturally appropriate way. But it's still essentially the same message. I mean, you have Radio Television Serbia, which starts with news about the president, what he's doing, which is completely positive. Then you have, the ministers, others, what they're doing. They have a, human interest story where they're explaining how, something that the government did is doing great with regular people. And then, they have, the world, sports, the weather, and that's it. You barely ever, maybe you hear the opposition for a minute or two out of 30 minutes, but that happens maybe every week once, and that's it. So there's no different viewpoint to be heard. And they say, well, you have social media. Yeah, but it doesn't influence people. It's not a matter of, if the law is being broken, and it's being broken every day, because the laws guarantee fair and balanced media approach to all political options in Serbia. You can't just say, well, you have social media. It's kind of like you see, a murder taking place on the street, and the solution for that is, look to the other side. That's not going to solve it. You have to stop the murder from happening. So that's kind of the point, because you have our president going on television sometimes saying, well, if you don't like it, change the channel. To what? All television stations with a national frequency are controlled by the government. All of them. Not most of them. All of them. And that's really troubling.
So your viewpoint on Serbia, if you're looking for the United States, is being blocked about what's going on in Serbia. You can see social media through some friends. And if you're from Serbia, trying to look outside or inside, everything is kind of gloomy. You can't see the whole situation. So what would your piece of advice be for someone who's actually thinking of Serbia to come this way is how things look over here, and for someone living here, going back, how things look back home comparing to here.
Well, look, it's not easy anywhere. I mean, I know everybody who lives in diaspora knows very well that life here is hard, especially when you come here with nothing. You're going to go through a really tough period. And I think people in Serbia have to be aware of that. If they're trying to go, thinking about going, they should know that life here is hard. Like, okay, you make maybe more money, but the expenses are bigger as well. I mean, I hear Serbian people all the time say like, oh, look at Canada, it's $3,000 a month. Yeah, that's really big in Serbia, but in Canada it's not that much, because if you want to rent out, apartment in the center somewhere in downtown, that's going to be $1,500 right there. If you want to, pay for food, that's going to be $500. If you want to rent a car, $500, and gas, electricity, all those things, another $500. The $3,000 goes away like that, and you're left with pittance, maybe even less than what you're left with after you pay all the expenses in Serbia with an average salary. So you have to work really hard for a really, really long time for it to, and I read this really interesting piece by this one person who was thinking about leaving, and said that if I'm going to leave Serbia, I'm going to be leaving my friends, my family, my country, my neighborhood, everything that I love, I'm going to be leaving all that. I'm not going to leave all that to live 20% better or 30% better or 50 even. I'm going to leave if I'm going to live 4, 5, 6 times better, because you pay a cost already, and people don't think about that cost. I don't think of, oh, I'm going to have, instead of 100 euros in my pocket, I'm going to have 200 euros in my pocket. Wow, every month more, and that's troubling. And I always tell the people, try everything that you can in Serbia first, everything that you can. If you can't succeed in what you're doing, I would say, this guy, if he hadn't left, Nikola Tesla, he would have never achieved what he did, because there was simply no resources to do what he wanted to do. So he had to go to the US, many others as well. So it's not a bad thing going. It's just like, try to do everything you can here first, in Serbia first, and then think about going. And I always suggest to people, go for a year. Don't be like, oh, I'm leaving and never coming back. Just go for a year. Say like, I'm going for a year to see if I like. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you won't. Because if people say like, oh, I'm leaving forever, and they go and they don't like it, they think it's horrible, then they can't come back, because they said like they're leaving forever, and people are going to tease them and be like, oh, well, you couldn't make it in America. So it's pressure, and then people stay even though they don't want to. So I tell people, try it out. If you like it, you can always come, stay or come back or whatever. People living here that they want to return, I guess give the same example and advice: go back here. If you like it back, stay. If you don't, come back. It's all a matter of what do you want from life. I mean, if you want to have friends in Serbia, you'll have friends. It's really not that hard to find friends in Serbia and be happy in that sense. If you want a lot of money, it's probably going to be more difficult to get that in Serbia, especially if you don't want to sell your soul. But it is possible. I know people who are not members of any political party, who don't have any connections, who are doing fairly well. So it is possible. Of course, if you want to advance to be a billionaire, you're going to have to be a part of the political option in Serbia. But if you want to live a decent life and hang out with friends, you can go back. And I tell to everybody, work on changing the system. Don't just be a passive viewer of the system and everything that's going on wrong in Serbia. Try to do everything you can to change the system. So participate, talk about it, go to protests, go to meetings, and try to lobby for things to change. Every day, at least 15 minutes, do something that's going to help our country be a better place. And I think that, it is going to be a better place.
Definitely. I remember the first time I came back to Serbia, I was here for 4 months. I went to my college, talked to my professor. He's like, how was it? I said, okay, I did 2-3 jobs, working 90 hours a week. She looked at me, how many hours? But you could have worked out here and make a lot of money also. I was like, she's kind of right. I mean, you could probably finding a job and make a decent amount of money if you work that much. But back home, he's like, 35, 40 hours. Fine. It's okay.
No, exactly. I mean, they used to call me to these various events, like where in Serbia, where young people would come, and the topic was, should I stay or should I go? Which is like that song. And And I would always say, like, well, I always advocate for people staying and everything, but going for maybe a year or two or studying, like, that's great. Throughout history, Serbs have been going out to study and learn different things and bring it back to Serbia. And this one guy raised his hand and said, you know what? Why should I stay in Serbia? I don't even have money for beer on weekends, And I said, like, okay, well, what do you do? Where do you work? And he said, look, I don't work. I'm studying. I'm a student. I said, like, well, okay, but where do you work? He's like, I don't work. I'm a student. I said, yeah, well, in the United States, students have part-time jobs. And he was like, my God, It's like, yeah, and you want to go there, but you're not willing to work. Why don't you work here? And you'll have money for beer. If that's your biggest argument, biggest talking point is you want some money in your pocket. You can have that in Serbia. People in Serbia don't want to go and work in like McDonald's because somebody's going to recognize them. In the U.S., nobody's going to recognize them. So they think it's beneath them to be studying because this is something that our parents have always told us when we were growing up. Go to university so you don't have to work in life. This is what we've been told. Because if you study, you shouldn't work. Like when you finish studying, your life should be cut out for you. But as I said, this is not how the world works. You need to work really hard. And you're right. If you work hard in Serbia, you will succeed. As I said, to a certain point, depending on what your goals are, this guy, he had bigger goals. But if your goal is to live a decent life, be close to your family, and have good friends, you can have that in Serbia. Everything else that doesn't work on the systemic level, this is what we need to fight for together. So this is not something an individual can do. We need to get behind a certain idea and push for it. And we will win. I mean, I think Serbia in 10 years could look radically different. But it depends on what we're going to do in those 10 years.
We need more reaction. We have a lot of talking. Not everyone wants to get together and do certain things. It's always easier to spit on someone. Actually say, oh, this is not good. You got to do it better. You have to do this. Everyone's a boss and a leader, like you said. So, I mean, but here you learn a lot of democracy, like democratic ways, as they call it. We have Republican governing the whole system. So a lot of people, but they talk more politics. They look like Serbia right now, actually, more than. I was like, I did this asking me always to come. I was like, oh, what do you think about the president? I was like, he doesn't pay my check. Taxes a little bit shifted back and forth. That's for millionaires, not for me. It doesn't change anything. I was like, I'm tired of that back home. Everyone talks about it. Back when it was Obama, no one talked about anything. Right now, it's just the whole concept. Like he's doing some other things. He's talking actually about whatever he talks about. He diverts the attention from everything's happening, and everyone's they're so into it. Like right now, we talk about Vučić. They talk about him right now. The same thing. Just talking. That's like a number one topic.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that's the same thing because people here focus on Trump, just as people in Serbia focus on Vučić. You're right. This is what I actually tell the people. You should say that, talk about what Vučić is doing wrong and everything, but that shouldn't be the main thing that you're talking about. The main thing is the system. People don't talk about that.
And people don't talk about themselves. No one wants to talk about that. That's the hardest topic to pull out to. So, Boris, premiere is coming up in a couple hours. I'm not going to hold you that longer. I cannot wait to see the movie. Thanks so much. It was a pleasure talking to you. Hopefully talk soon again.
Thank you very much. And, I hope we'll have a chance to meet up either in Belgrade, in Serbia, somewhere, or here. Why not?
Sounds perfect to me. Thanks so much, Boris.